Well, today we just wanted to talk a little bit about using or thinking about how to use your COVES data during a closure. And this became, it was timely anyway, because we had been hearing about waves of closures for museums that had reopened. And of course, some of you have never reopened since March, but then it hit home because yesterday I was pulled into an emergency meeting and learned that the Museum of Science will be closing at the end of the day today for at least 3 weeks. Just at City of Boston, the mayor, it wasn't even the governor, it was the city specifically, and a couple of other cities made an agreement, but the museum's in Boston, and so that's what happened. A couple of museums in the Boston area have been voluntarily reclosing. So the Children's Museum voluntarily closed and the Institute of Contemporary Art voluntarily closed. But now it's down from the mayor, so we're closing for a little while. Definitely feeling worried about missing out on the holiday time, and hoping that it won't result in any more staffing changes or anything. I'm sure many of you are in the same boat, so much sympathy to everyone. But we wanted to think more about just using the tools available to us during a closure, whether it's to plan for reopening or decide whether or not to reopen, or to dig into analysis that you've been putting off. And so Shini from the Exploratorium was going to share a little bit about what the Exploratorium has been doing during their extended closure, and then I have a couple of anecdotes from Brett at the New York Hall of Science, and then would love to hear more. I'm sure I've been trying to think about what the Museum of Science might do, what we'll do, but Shini, do you want to just take it away and talk about what you've done?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone, and thank you for Alex for reaching out to us to invite us to share our experience with using COVE data to justify our decision to remain closed. So as you may know, the Exploratorium has remained closed since March, and we are planning to reopen on the Pi Day next year. Fingers crossed. So things are very unstable right now. The California government has also announced another round of shelter in place, stay-at-home order. So we have been constantly monitoring the situation to adjust our plan. But our current plan is that we are going to reopen on Pi Day, hopefully. So today I'm going to share a bit about what kind of analysis support our decision to remain closed, and what are some rationale to justify this data-driven decision making. Okay, let me share my screen.
Ryan, can you make sure that she can share? Nice.
Okay. Boo-boo. So we analyze, can everybody see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Cool, thank you. So in overview, we analyzed old-time COVE data from July 2016 to March before we closed. And the variables we focus on include whether visitors are coming from an international background, are they living in the US, their zip code, if they are US visitors, number of visits in the past year, and do they have any Expo memberships, as well as other demographic variables. So what we found is that international and out-of-state visitors account for about 1/3 of our total visitorship. And it's very unlikely that this group of visitors will return back to us once we reopen. And Bay Area visitors who have a higher propensity to revisit if we decide to reopen make up about half of our total visitorship. And we also follow the definition from Museum of Science. According to a report generated by the Museum of Science, active visitors who are those who living in the local area and who have visited us in the past year 2 or more times are more likely to revisit upon reopening. So following this definition, we found that only about 16 of the Exploratorium's visitors are active visitors. This suggests that in the best scenario that we can imagine, we can only attract about 16 of our total visitors if we decide to reopen during COVID. And the revenues it generates may not necessarily justify the cost of maintenance or logistic if we decide to reopen. And after we look further into the visitor demographic information, what we found is that when we compare active visitors against other visitors, more than half of our active visitors have Expo membership, meaning that their visiting would not bring more revenues or profits. So indeed, when considering all the information, we found that less than 10% of the Expo visitor have a greater likelihood upon revisiting if we decide to reopen. And it could also like bring some profits to us. Based upon this analysis and our constant monitoring of the city's COVID guideline, we believe that remaining closed is actually more beneficial to our financial health, as well as the health and safety of our staff and visitors. And we, based upon this decision, we decide to shift our current business focus to like collaboration with other museums or other science centers. So we're very grateful and pleased that we do have COVES data to allow us to make such an important business decisions based upon evidence, not just about our like best guesses. So as for the next step, we are also looking into COVES data to analyze at what time people enter our museum and how long do they usually stay, at which season do they come, and several other like experience indicator to plan our system for time ticketing if we decide to reopen.
Thank you so much. I actually have a couple of questions, and others may too as well, but what was I feel like when I heard Josh talk about this, or maybe when you just talked about it, you were kind of presenting it as making the argument that we needed to stay closed. Like, who were you making the argument to, or who was that group?
So before, so when we first decided to close in compliance of the city's order, we were picturing different scenarios, different timelines for possible reopening. So we were thinking about reopening in the summer, and then the summertime did not look good because the cases were still increasing. So we were discussing whether or not we want to reopen in like fall around October or November. So and several people still share some concerns about whether or not it's a rush because like the cases are still increasing, and the pushback about not opening is about like whether or not we can remain financially stable. So we do this cost effective like analysis to justify if reopen really benefits. And so, and we present this to the senior leadership team who are making the decision about whether or not the exportorium will want to reopen. And they are very in favor of the data to support the decision that, reopening may not be the best scenario or best approach to solve our current financial problem.
And I am feeling like at the Museum of Science anyway, the mood or the hope is that everyone was eager to open, or not everyone, but I feel like the senior team was eager to open and is now eager to stay open, and was definitely disappointed that we were asked to close. And I don't think we were considering voluntarily reclosing. So I'm wondering what at Exploratorium, it sounds like it was a little bit different. What was that like?
So per my understanding, there are two different views. A lot of staff, they still believe that remained closed would be superior because it protects our safety. And but for people who are more in charge of finance and budgeting, they are more eager to see to play out different scenarios to decide how we plan for the 2021 budgeting. So we created different scenarios, reopening versus remaining closed, and to find out if like we do have like funds or budgets coming from other revenues or like channels that could support us for an extended period of shelter in place.
Well, that's great. Does anyone else have questions? I thought that was very informative.
Yeah, I really like how your example of how you use this data, COVES data in this way, to really dig in, because that could have easily been missed by not digging deeper into the data. I'm curious, you said that it's mostly members that come during these times. I know like the Science Museum of Minnesota, we're closed right now, but when we were open, state guidelines where we could only have 250 people there at a time. So it's not that we were bringing in we weren't making money by being open. It was more to keep engaged with the visitors and our audiences.
True.
And saw that as a reason to keep open and we were only open Fridays through Sundays, so it wasn't a full normal opening, and we had special times for just members. We've also been doing things to engage our members during that time as a way to make sure that we keep those people members and we keep holding on to those audiences while we're closed, and we're closed again because of the state. But I'm wondering if the Exploratorium has been doing certain things to engage members and audiences because you've been closed for so long, what that has been like.
Yes, so we basically shift our focus to the virtual world. So we are offering a lot of online programs like Online After Dark or online educational science next kind of activities, or like online education about several behind the scenes story of our exhibits. So we are our online content team is working really hard, and we are also adapting some COVE questions to create online audience feedback survey. So we have been piloting the online program survey since December. And one thing that is a little bit more challenging is that because online survey is totally voluntary, nobody is like soliciting your feedback. So the response and the bounce off rate is a bit not so satisfactory. So it would require ongoing process of data collection before we can gather like enough information to support further decision making. And to the question about how we define active visitors, we define active visitors as those who living in the local area and those who have visited us 2 or more times in the past year.
Great. Any other questions that came up? I have a couple examples to share from Brett that I thought were pretty interesting too. So Brett at the New York Hall of Science is in a similar place where I don't believe the New York Hall of Science reopened at all since the closure in March, but it sounds like to build on what you just said, Shinyi, about doing kind of an online survey that adapts some COVES questions. Sounds like they've been running some web-based surveys with their audience, and then they use the COVES data to understand the degree to which they represent, like those visitors represent their kind of general public visiting audience. So always comparing the demographics or other profiles of those web survey respondents to the COVES survey. So according to him, he said it generally tends to be the case that hyper engaged visitors with the slightly different demographic profile tend to respond to those online surveys, and COVES helps them understand how large the grain of salt needs to be that they're taking the survey results with, which I think we're seeing that too. Even doing the COVES survey via email, seeing the degree to which, the percentage of members or something is different from our COVES survey. We can also look at the actual visitation percentage on the floor, but of course we're overrepresenting even with that. And then he also added, while we have not yet reopened, it's been encouraging to see the efforts that museums have taken to inspire confidence around health and safety have been well received. So I think, for a museum that hasn't opened at all, it might be like, is it enough for us to do XYZ cleaning procedures or something like that? So he said, reading some of the open-ended comments gives us the feeling that visibility of sanitization procedures is likely as important to inspiring confidence as the procedures themselves, which is something I've absolutely observed in those open-ended comments. So people remark upon seeing or not seeing staff actively cleaning high-touch areas so they can make sure to make the cleaning highly visible when we do have visitors on site. and said, of course, sensitivity around this and other COVID health and safety topics may be different when we do reopen. So they're not sure about the ultimate utility of the information. And I would say that our experience too has been similar with that, just in terms of like, especially around the science of spread and COVID and surfaces, that it's maybe not the most, I don't know, it's not the surfaces are not as dangerous as we thought they originally were, but that seeing people cleaning things that are high touch is very impactful for feelings of safety. So maybe it's worth doing anyway. But that was what Brett shared. So I thought that all of those examples were really interesting. And I just wanted to kind of open it up. Who right now is closed or about to close, or any, who is closed? We're closed. Lauren's not closed. Bell is closed. Yeah, Minnesota museums are closed. California is still closed. So
we
yeah.
just closed 2 weeks ago at Children's Discovery Museum in San Jose. We were open, had our outdoor space open from the end of September through the end of November. And we used the COVES data to help us determine how effective our communications were being and how effective the health and safety protocols were. And what we learned is that there was a group of, it was split, like there was a group of people that were really happy, felt very, very safe, very comfortable in our space. And then there was this other group of people who felt like they were happy that we had these health and safety protocols, but they were disappointed that we weren't enforcing them. And they saw parents and children and people not obeying by them, and they felt it incumbent upon the museum to enforce these protocols that we had stated. And so so we made some changes based on that, and you know, we put another staff person in the space to help and with visibility, but also to be able to someone who was assertive and could approach our visitors, and when they saw that people weren't wearing their mask, or they would go behind a space or an area and then they'd take off their mask, you know, or you know, any number of things that people thought were violations. And so and then we also created a new sign that was right at the entrance that said that we would be enforcing these guidelines. And then in our communications, we also highlighted that, started to highlight that we would be enforcing these health and safety protocols. So, so we had that in effect for about, I guess, 3 weeks or so, and then we got shut down. So, but that was helpful. The information that we got from COVES.
Just want to share another personal observation. So because the expo has remained closed for 9 months or so, and a lot of our members are really expressing a desire to revisit or like have some more like opportunity to get more connected with the expo. And we are also, because we also have some needs to do like in-person usability testing. So we somehow combine the two desires from our own staff and from our members or visitors. And when we are still at the stage where we can do outdoor museum opening, but not indoor museum opening, we somehow pivot use in-person exhibit usability testing as a type of like member perk, and marketing that's helping us pilot our new exhibit or our exhibit adaptation is in like member exclusive way to get in touch and get connected with the Exploratorium while we are still close to the public.
That's great. What are other folks thinking about during closures? Ryan, go ahead.
I just hearing what you said that Brett said really reinforces something that is still going on. This notion that we've kind of debunked the idea that the main transmission is through surfaces and high touch areas. It's still possible, but it's low, and there's much more science behind that now. But there was a post on the Aztec forum even this morning, you know, about like, why are science centers putting so much emphasis on cleaning, you know, and the last word is, or the last phrase is just food for thought, right? All this hygiene theater talk. And from a scientific perspective, you're like, oh yeah, that's pretty true. But when you look at data and when you look at our visitors and when you hear about their needs or their perceptions of health and safety, it doesn't necessarily follow the strict science. So when we're all thinking about providing the healthiest, safest, best visitor experience possible, that's why we're still cleaning all those high touch surface areas, because not everybody is aware of that. And people, even if it's just to be reassured, I want to know that the stuff I'm touching is clean. I want hand sanitizer available. Please don't run out of hand sanitizer, you know? So I think it's really important that we keep reflecting on what the visitors are seeing. And the only way we do that is through the visitor data, not just what the scientists are publishing in journals that most of the public don't read. So I'm heartened by our data. I'm reminded of the importance of doing that. And I'm glad that Brett is bringing that up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we saw comments, not just in the COVES data, but also like on our social sites, on Yelp and TripAdvisor, and places where people were happy and felt very comfortable. And when they would say that, they would often say, they saw staff cleaning and the spaces. And so the science is there, but people make a lot of decisions based on their emotions. And so it's the reminding all of us that there's an emotional reaction, an emotional temperature that everybody's responding to in their perception.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we actually got a little bit of, I guess it was pushback on an all staff forum kind of thing that we have weekly. And the Museum of Science has been using the data, the COVES data about, you know, X% of visitors said that the museum fully or mostly or fully addressed my concerns about safety. So they've been trying to like track that number and keep it always above like 90% or 95% or something. So making sure that if people are coming in with concerns, that they're always reporting that we address them, or, you know, almost always. And there was an anonymous comment that was like, isn't there some sort of a bias in asking people who are at the museum if they felt safe? Because if you ask a bunch of people maskless in a crowded bar if they feel safe, they'll say, yeah, sure, I feel safe. And I had a reaction that was like, well, of course there's bias. But then I remembered the way we asked the question actually does try to account for that a little bit by asking not, did you feel safe, but ask, before you arrived today, what was your level of concern? And then only asking people who actually had a concern, okay, did the museum address your concerns? We were able to respond to that a little bit, but I was sensing of, you know, that's a real issue, right? Like even in the question and the way we ask it, so I think I might have frozen there for a second. But you know, trying to respond to that honestly, but also realizing like, you know, we did try to account for that a little bit. But
Alex, I know this, and I remember, I think we talked about this in the question and measures group when we were developing these questions.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, like this is a time where, you know, people who are going to certain places are going there because they have some level of safety or some level of comfort with doing that activity. So that's a limitation. You know, our data is those people who are going to be doing that, and maybe, and we don't know about the people that aren't coming to the museum because they don't feel safe enough to go there, regardless of what we've been communicating to them. So I think that's just a good reminder for all of us. Like, we know that's the limitation of this time. For any place people are going, people are, like you said, people that go to a bar might feel safe and they're going for particular reasons. But I think that's just a good reminder for us too.
So we collected data on, we kind of had that same thought in mind, and we weren't collecting the same way the rest of the COVES team is, but we definitely looked at kind of comfort in different places, which consistently is kind of coming out the same. You know, crowded bar is always falling to the bottom, and actually coming to the museum is usually at the top. It was interesting because we did kind of an analysis based on attendance, and over Labor Day weekend, it dropped again, and it was much lower because it was just a crowded day for COVID COVID times. But that was really interesting to me to have that added context. And I know Houston is probably, I'm laughing because I'm seeing in our open-ended, like, why are you still asking about COVID? This is like old news. I don't want to think about it anymore. And meanwhile, other institutions are shutting down. So it's just, I think it's very fascinating how kind of local context and who's actually showing up, how much that influences it. We also, another thing that was popping to mind is we have like 56% people who have never been before. So that's also just probably a big distinction and difference based on what our audience looks like. So I'll be interested once we're using the standardized tool to make some of those comparisons and see where we throw things totally off.
I was thinking about that with Shinyi's data about the exploratorium specifically, and any of our museums that are like large tourist destinations or that get a lot of out-of-town visitors versus a museum that has a visitorship that's much more locally rooted, like that economic decision might be completely different. And so I think that context is really interesting.
Yeah, and I know we don't have a super strong membership base quite yet. I know that's something that our team has been growing over time, but it's not there yet. So that's also been funny. Our members are not more vocal than the rest of the visitors. So that's kind of nice. It's pretty balanced, but.
It's too bad we don't have any data on comfort with touching surfaces pre-COVID. Maybe the children's museums do, but plenty of us with little tiny ones, we're always chasing after them with hand wipes and sanitizer and ripping fingers out of their mouths anyways. And so like, I know personally, if I saw in a museum people cleaning stuff all the time, I felt more comfortable, and that added a positive thing. So we don't, obviously things are heightened with COVID, but I wonder over time if there's a permanent change or if it's going to look like there's a permanent change, but it's still that many of us cared about it already. But we can't go back in time.
Beth, I was wondering about that too, because even though we know how COVID spreads, we also know, like in Minnesota, now is when like flu season and cold season and all these other things. And now is not the time any of us want to get any of those other things as well. Because, someone at work gets sick and everyone's like, oh my gosh, do you have COVID? No, it's just cold. So I think there's just this extra cleaning because you just don't want to get sick. And our hospitals here are all like almost to capacity. So you don't want to have to go to the doctor. So I think even though people might know the science, they might be being extra careful just because they don't want to get other things. So.
What else are folks thinking about in terms of data analysis while closed? Or what would it be helpful for COVES to provide to help you with more data analysis while you're closed?
I've been looking a lot at visitor motivations, more so taking the time pre-COVID and figuring out, is it children that matters? Is age the difference? Membership, so kind of slicing and dicing some different things and what the experience is like. And we have very limited, because we're only open outdoors for a tiny bit of motivations, and it was kind of different because everyone came for a specific thing. But I don't know, my sense is that might give some insight to post-reopening, getting people back. I mean, when we had our outdoor spider and butterfly pavilions, I mean, tickets went in a heartbeat. People were mad, but it was also 75% members, which is like reverse what a normal thing would be. So I don't know, I'm curious in motivations. I'd like to dig in more to the raw, because I know we only have like a prelim set and there's some things that are missing from that. Yeah, so that's my curiosities. Are motivations changing a lot, or people just really want the same things? But for us, is to spend time together. But I've also been kind of dicing it into anyone who like chose a fun reason or an education or a group reason or a self reason. I don't know what I'm doing with it, but.
I'm not quite sure like if it's an easy task, but like I've been noticing from the COVE data that for museums or science centers that have opened, a lot of sometimes visitors provided feedback that they were glad that the museums were open, but they were somehow disappointed that there were only limited set of exhibits they could use because we have to remove most of the interactive hands-on exhibits, which are the most attractive part. So I wonder if there are any type of questions or analysis we can conduct to compare like how we balance safety and the needs of the our visitors to decide like what proportion of our exhibits can be dedicated to like hands-on experience.
That one's been very interesting to me too, because I know that like local regulations have played a big role, and I'm thinking about Mike at the Discovery Center Museum. I don't know if this is still the case, but where you know the local regulations required that you could have your hands-on exhibits open, but you had to have a staff escort the entire time. Is that still what's happening for each group who comes?
Well, that was true until they shut us down a second time.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, our area, if it were a country, would be the worst country in the world per 100,000, behind only one other. So none that came out of the museum though, because we were walking everybody around.
Making sure that they weren't, you know,
and cleaning up after them.
taking their masks off. Yeah. Yep. But I feel like the Museum of Science anyway, we kept saying before we opened that we were opening more of our interactives than we had heard other people were going to choose to do or were being allowed to do. And that was like the call that we made. And I feel like there was a lot of variation there. And I think, Shinyi, you're probably onto something. There's probably some wiggle room in there with what's necessary and what you can get to so that people still have, you know, enough interactions that going to the museum is still gonna be fun.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the aggregated the comments for, you know, the health and safety for those that were addressed mostly or fully, and then those that weren't. And for the ones that weren't, you know, we've already hit the highlights. It's I don't see staff cleaning. It's I don't see staff enforcing the rules that you said you were going to have. And then that third one is stuff wasn't open, right? So there's that fine line between closing areas that you don't think you can clean adequately to give visitors the sense of health and safety that they're telling us they need, versus making sure there are ample opportunities for them to do the things that they know and love at our very interactive museums. And so it's, you know, it's you can't win, but you have to try and appease as many people as possible, following the science and also listening to the data. So it's tough.
I know we were forced to close a couple of our most popular shows because they were categorized as like live performances, and the different phases of our state's reopening were saying, you know, your museum can be open, but you can't have any live performances. And so the planetarium opened after the rest of the museum at reduced capacity, and like, you know, theaters are a whole different thing. So unfortunately our you know, showstopper electricity lightning show, I don't think it was ever, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we had any lightning shows, and people were very upset about that.
Yeah, no lightning shows, no Connor's presentations, very few educator-led directives at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, something that's interesting that came out of the kind of closed off stuff from our open-ended, we have a lot of people who said like exhibits were closed and they didn't expect it, but we only closed one space. And so our team was really confused because they were like, how's this happening? So I used a little bit of speculation to inform it, but I was thinking about how we also have really bad wayfinding and people are always lost, and kind of the knowledge of that combined with the fact that people are seeing all these stanchions up, maybe they're thinking an exhibit space is closed, and our one-way flow is actually making people confused more so than feeling safe. So that data kind of gave our team something to tweak and refine and adjust. And we've kind of done away with the one-way flow thing because our attendance is so low, it's not super helpful. So that's just something that we've kind of realized. And then we also have a bunch of hand sanitizer stations up next to anything that is open and interactive. So it seems to be going okay. People aren't, again, I can't tell you, Texas seems to be the anomaly here, but people don't seem too perturbed by it. But I'll be excited to see that comfort using the interactives, because we don't have a specific question about that yet.
Mm-hmm.
So.
I mean, personally, one thing I was interested in doing is just being so busy, even while the museum is open, not having time to just go back and look at some of the data that we've been collecting, especially some of the Museum of Science specific data. We added, like, frankly, far too many questions. And so I want to wrap those up and maybe get them removed from our survey so we can kind of deliver that data to folks. We actually asked a question about emotions. We had a how did you feel while you were visiting, kind of thinking about that's kind of a big thing for our learning and research division. And so we had like a big list based on some other studies we've done. And, you know, it was a lot of like really positive emotions. I mean, and some are like borderline, whether it's an emotion or kind of a different kind of a state, like safe. Is that an emotion? But it's something that people are thinking. So did you feel safe? So that was like, I think the second or third most common thing that people were saying. So I used that in some of our data to say, like, visitors do feel safe, and also we're addressing their concerns. You know, but a lot of things that you might expect, like, oh, I felt satisfied, I felt joyful, you know, that kind of stuff is coming out too. And I just want to go back and look at that data a little bit more. Ryan, were you say something?
No, I was just gonna, transition us like in the agenda.
Yeah.
I don't want to sit in silence too long. I love talking about data. I am literally reading our data sets, as we're going through this, and it is fascinating. And there's definitely much more work that we could do, or at least interesting areas that we could find. But I'm reflecting on your agenda, and like we were going to talk about data for a little bit, and then we were going to say, it's been the end of a crazy year. And just, a community space to say, like, hey, I'm thankful for all of you people, all of my people, our tribe, and also, open it up to just that, to like, you did a good segue yourself, Alex, talking about emotions. Like, there's a lot of emotions this year. So just thought I would make that segue.
Can I just add maybe as a on that point, but also to keep us tethered a little bit to what we were just talking about. This is maybe something applicable to museums that are open or who were for a little while, but the extent to which like the visitor experience overall still matters a lot, and that will reflect on how they judge COVID specific questions. So, if you had a poor experience with a staff member or something like that, then when you're responding to your survey, especially if it's when you get home and it's by email or something, you might look back on that, and that specific interaction sticks out, and then you think to yourself, well, actually, I didn't actually see them cleaning that much, or so you don't look across your time at the museum as a sort of rationally divided. Did I feel safe regarding COVID? And then, okay, I'm going to separate my just regular visitor experience stuff. So obviously it all matters, and I think that we're all doing our best to make sure that everybody's staying safe, but also the visitors are still having that experience that we want them to have.
Mm-hmm. I remember being even a little, I shouldn't have been surprised, but I kind of was at the amount of comments in our text prompts that were specifically about like COVID things. They were just about regular stuff, just about visitor experience stuff. They were just like, oh, I really love the animal exhibit. I was like, okay, great. I'm glad, and to add to that too, I think a lot of what we talked about when we were reopening was making sure that people felt safe and comfortable enough that they didn't have to be constantly thinking about the COVID-19 protocols, and that they could kind of refocus and just think about their visit. And so I think that's a really good reminder.
Yeah, I think that we're looking forward to seeing the data once again, once we reopen, because we were starting to notice some of that right before we closed down, that although people were reporting that they felt very safe, a lot of the open-ended comments were leaning in that direction of you're almost too helpful when it comes to COVID restrictions. Like we don't constantly need to be reminded about, the masks and this and that. Like we just want to come back and focus on the cool things.
Thanks, Beth. Good to see you. I hope that, I know it's a weird year, but I hope people are planning something that's like nice and winter cozy, or, I mean, maybe it's not like super cold where you are. A lot of us are in cold places, or, New Year holiday things. I got tickets to zoo lights here. So the one of the zoos is doing like a light show. It's all outdoors. It can be fun.
Space Center Houston has their second year of Galaxy Lights, which is same thing, but space themed. And yeah, that's how they subbed out our holiday party for a free Galaxy Lights night. So it was fun. It was good to see what they have installed instead of just reading the survey results.
Lots of Christmas movies. Yep. Hopefully really corny, cheesy Hallmark movies. Galaxy Lights. That sounds amazing. I'm tempted. I know it's not
You're a
safe,
sucker
but I'm
for
tempted.
space.
Ugh.
Wait till year 3. It'll be better then. Currently, the OER is not giving us a... I'll let you look at the OER before you decide to see if it's worth COVID.
It's a work in progress. Okay.
Still a work in progress, but it's better than it was last year. So
Right.
That's good. Well, I'm super grateful to this team for letting us jump in throughout the whole year, just because I know we haven't been official members and we're not officially doing it all the right way, but it's been super, super helpful to hear colleagues' ideas of kind of how they're each handling this. I know I can't remember who it was, but someone recently told me that they had only kind of been focusing on COVES data. And I was like, oh, good. It's okay that I've had 15 other projects fall off the table, because this is a lot. There's so much going on. So it's very reassuring to have this community, and I'm grateful to have had all this time to sit in through this kind of crisis mode and hear all of your ideas. So thank you.
There's no group of people I'd rather be in it with. You guys are great.
Yeah, and for as crazy as 2020 has been, I have to imagine that with the hope that's on the horizon for 2021 and some of the vaccine developments, that the data are going to be more important than ever, because we keep talking about 2020 as a unique year to do comparisons to, but if we're in 2021 and we have COVES data, and then things continue to evolve across the year, and we are able to open and stay open for that time, it'll be a really interesting period of analysis to just say how are things changing? How quickly are they changing? Where are they changing the most? What are the things we pay attention to? So that's a lot in and of itself, but I think it's exciting for this group to kind of get out in front of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think piggybacking on Lauren, I think it was we're all in this together. We're all experiencing this together. And so I think what's been great is having this community where we can talk and see what different people what the experience has been like at their museum and how they're navigating it. And we're all learning how to collect data in this time in different ways at the same time. So it's been great to have this community to not only just talk about COVES, but just other things that challenges we've had to have as evaluators at this moment in time. We have other ways that we reach out as a community, but to have these spaces to talk together has been important. And And I think too, to have the COVES data, you know, we have like Know Your Bone has been putting out this data about nationwide, which as an institution, we haven't been paying as close attention to because that local data is so much more important and what people are actually doing is so much more important. So I think that if we didn't have that, we would have been relying more on this other data, but I think it just also points to how important this is, and to also see how this works in different places, and also to learn from like people who are still open versus people who are closed, to be able to bring those back to our institutions too is super important. I was thinking if this was still funded by IMLS or NSF, these would be great things to write about in your report about like other benefits of this network and how it's benefited the field other than just having the shared measure piece of it.
Amy, you'll be happy to know that we did recently present to IMLS about COVES in all its many grant-funded pieces. And we were able to highlight the community and some of the unexpected outcomes as part of that, which was really awesome to be able to share.
And I should say you do have a grant because you have that art COVES one. So talk about this in there. Yeah.
Are you guys
We're trying to replicate it in art museums too, grow it and have more art museums join us. So
are you guys recruiting for art COVES? Like, okay.
Yeah.
I'll start passing the word around because that's something I love to do.
Yeah, if you know art museum people who, I mean, chances are they may already know about COVES art. If they're the art museums who kind of already doing evaluation or have that on their radar, they may kind of already be participating, but it never hurts. I think we always want to know who's interested so they can be like the first line as we grow.
I imagine if you don't have Houston already, I know that they like to be involved, but I want to be able to, you know, team up citywide. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I think some of those benefits are already panning out in the Twin Cities. Getting that strong museum contingent across the city is pretty helpful. So John and Tyler, I'm sure there's Hartford, right? There's some stuff happening in Hartford. Where else could we go?
Yeah, I mean, Hartford, I mean, we've got pretty low visitation, but you know, our sort of line is that we're here for you in whatever way you would like to have us. Would you like to see us online? We're there. Would you like to see us in person? We're there. You know, the visitor services team and the visitor experience team has done an incredible job of making people feel good. The COVES data that we've gotten back has been very reinforcing. Yes, people miss some of the things that we had to take away. And, you know, that's just part of the deal. But you know, for the most part, you know, right now we're every intention and plan to stay open. There's not a lot of movement in the state of Connecticut, at least, to back away from where we are right now from an opening standpoint without without more federal aid. I think it would be too rough for everybody. But you know, it's strange to celebrate these very low visitation days as successes. But you know, and this is, you know, what I take heart from, you know, here as well as from across the country of what everyone's doing is, you know, we're all having to live into our mission in different ways. You know, some of the things that we're doing now would have taken us years to come by. You know, crisis begets opportunity, and you know, being able to take advantage of some of those and drawing some of the communities closer together. You know, there are upsides, and as hard as that is to say, in the face of such horrific downsides. But you know, I'm incredibly, just to echo the sentiment, I'm incredibly grateful for this community of people who are looking at, our mission work and the collaboration. And, as you know, I like to say, it's great to have our community of all collaborators. That's so awesome. Our as I like to say, our competitors are apathy and Netflix, right? Like that's it. Everything else is collaborative, and I love that.
Very nice, John. Kidding. Lots of applause. Well, I think that's an appropriate note to end on. I mean, why give folks 5 minutes back, take a break, get a drink of water or something before your inevitable next Zoom meeting. Hopefully not too many of. But of course, I'll just echo what everyone else has said. Thank you so much for being a part of our community, participating, sharing your stories, being really active, just being great coworkers, colleagues, and friends. And Happy New Year almost. I can't wait to be in 2021, even though it doesn't mean anything for real. I think psychologically, can't wait to be there. So have a great day, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Good seeing you.
Bye.